The media is once again either surrendering or crumbling or both, and we have examples of all of that. And so today we have to talk about massive television news and media company Tegna. So they've made some changes since the election. So bear in mind that they have been around for a bit. They spun off from media company Gannett back in 2015. So what they're doing now is they are eliminating in full their national verify fact-checking department. So their national fact-checking thing that seems like a pretty core part of a journalistic enterprise is done. Now, it was created 10 years ago. 19 journalists had been working to analyze and respond to misinformation. They've been laid off. And so its massive social media presence is being wound down. They had 600,000 followers across different platforms. And at one point on Tegna's website, it had said, we believe that in addition to seeking the truth, journalists must also stop the spread of misinformation and disinformation that has become so pervasive in our national discourse, especially on social media. That's why we launched Verify to help viewers and users distinguish between true and false information. And their analyses had been used by 49 newsrooms across the country. So that's gone. And that follows even just for Tegna. Last year, they laid off hundreds of employees as they moved towards more artificial intelligence and automation, exactly as was predicted. So this is just a great update because you have both sides of everything that's wrong with the media. So they are choosing not to fact check anymore, at least at the national level, and they're firing people and automating. And that basically means in both ways, you have less journalism, you have less critical oppositional journalism, and it isn't just them. The Washington Post announced like 100 firings just recently. HuffPo is now firing a bunch of their journalists. And even the ones that haven't been announcing big layoffs, like the LA Times or whatever, they're obviously not in the game of actually checking those with power anymore. And so it's really just like a perfect storm, Brett, of the media either defanging itself or disintegrating itself.
Yeah, so with this, there's a lot of fascinating revelations. One is that like Tegna's shutting down a part of the business that provides the service of fact checking. So you as a consumer of media, if you desire to use a service where, or in other companies, other parts of like journalistic operations, to use that service so that you can see what's true and what's false in America. It seems like they did it wrong, which is possible, and they're just bad at business, but it's more probable that people just don't have a demand for that anymore. People don't need the service, so no one's gonna pay for the service. There's not enough money in that game, so people get out of it.
That's almost scarier.
And that's the thing, and that's new to news for a lot of people, for relative to how long news has been around. That's new. Like for television news, the news section of the company's bottom line that was supposed to lose money. You just weren't supposed to make money, and that removes the profit motive from a lot of it. So you as a journalist can just journalism well. And there's something awesome about journalism. We need it because there's this instinct that a lot of people have, no matter what your system is, there's always gonna be some shameless D-bag who tries to take it over, conquer it, change it from what it is. And you need things, you need the white blood cells in the system, like journalism, to rally around that and just start working on it. And ahead of that, you also need people with a value system that drives their decision making and drives their positions to be able to recognize the very obviously good thing out there, that if there is a journalistic arm trying to get the truth out into the populace so that they can make informed decisions, like you need that kind of system working. But a lot of people, it is difficult because a lot of folks just want to feel good.
Yeah.
It used to be, let me turn on the news to find out what's going on. And there were a lot of problems with that system, when you just have a few companies owning it, like they're gonna do stuff like make the military industrial complex looks awesome and the pharmaceutical industry look awesome. By having independent media, you're not really beholden to those kinds of sponsors or that access. But there's no more access anymore. And worse, the people who are granted access, especially through Trump's system, those are the folks that are only ever kissing his ass and not reporting the facts anyway. And that's a terribly toxic, and I would argue worse system that we need to fix. But looking around at all the people who had like a business model surrounding that very premise that we need to show the truth to people, they can't cut it because there's no market for it, because the other side seems to be winning so badly. And a lot of us are complicit in it. Like there's a lot of times you see things tweeted by folks that are true and you're like, I don't like it because I don't like that person. That's a version of not wanting to hear the truth.
Yeah, and I find that very frustrating. I mean, I would imagine that, there was a lot of oppositional media that, sometimes the way that they did their news, we don't necessarily agree with, but there was a lot to do news about in opposition to Donald Trump that generated audiences for them. You would think, wouldn't there be that at the very least now? And now I guess a lot of them, I don't know, are afraid of losing their broadcast license or being investigated by Kash Patel someday or Pam Bondi. And so, yeah, look, there's obviously a lot of problems. It's not just on the corporations, it's on the desire. You rightly point out that a lot of more and more people they don't care if what they believe is true. And there's almost nothing in this world I find more frustrating than that. Everybody wants to just hide under a thick blanket of get out of thinking free cards. And that's why we try to respond to as many of them as we can. That's why we focus so much on racism and misogyny and all of that. I find that those are some of the most old school get out of having to actually think cards, psychological tricks that people use. And it's affecting the media as well.
Right.
The point has to be super fast.
The Riz to Ick ratio is really the determining factor in whether these guys win. Like the crazy like settlements that major media organizations are throwing at Trump, the like $1 million donations people are throwing at Trump for his inauguration. That's because Trump still has the Riz. But we need to find a way, and they're decreasing amounts of ways to do that. But if we find a way to just get the ick on this guy, which he absolutely deserves, then those folks won't be so bold as to say like, yes, sir, please let me give you some of all my treasures and abandon all concept of morality and ethics.
When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?